Hey everyone, welcome to Hot Topics Live. Today is Monday, 2 p.m. Central, and you guys know what that means. It's time to take 15 minutes out of your week to learn a new business tip or strategy to help you run your baking business. And today we are talking about one of the most essential elements of running a baking business, and that is how to price your baked goods. So we talk about pricing a lot here in the Home Bakery Business Tips Facebook group. And so you have most likely heard another training in the past if you've been here for a little while. But today we're going to focus specifically on how to know when it's time to raise your prices. So if you're feeling like you need to raise your prices, you've been stalling and postponing because you're just not really sure how to go about it, this is the episode for you. Now, I want to take just a second, as usual, and welcome all of our new members here in the Home Bakery Business Tips community. We are growing day by day. This group is getting so big, and I just want you all to know how much I appreciate you being here, how much I enjoy interacting with you inside the group, and creating this place where bakers can come to get advice about the business side of running their baking business. So that's what we're all about here, is helping each other to get better at business. And then a shout out over to our YouTube following. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, then go ahead and subscribe, and you won't miss another Home Bakery Business Tips when I go live. So you'll get notified every time we go live on Mondays. So welcome everyone. This is the place to be, and it is time to talk about pricing your baked goods. Now, I said today we're going to focus specifically on how to know when it's time to raise your prices. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I have had so many bakers reach out to me with concerns. And so I thought, what a better time than right before we head into the holidays to talk a little bit about your prices, whether they need to be updated before you start to sell a higher volume of baked goods, and how to know exactly how to do that. So we're going to go over two different things today. Number one, we're going to talk about how you know if you need to raise your prices. And then number two, we're going to be talking about a couple of tips to help you execute the raising of your prices. So let's start with the first topic. How do you know when it's time to raise your prices? Okay, so the first tip is you should be paying yourself every month. And you should be making a profit from every sale. That's what you have left over after you've paid for your bills, your ingredients, your packaging, things like that. Maybe you have farmer's market expenses. After the bills are paid, there should be money left over to pay you. So I know that a lot of bakers say that they leave their money in an account. Maybe it's your Venmo account where you collect your payments, or maybe it's your PayPal account. Or if you have a separate designated checking account for your baking, which I recommend, maybe you're just leaving the money in there each month because you know that you're going to need it eventually. So that is not paying yourself, even though there is money there. Paying yourself is when you actually transfer it out of your baking business, wherever it is, Venmo, PayPal, your own account for baking, and you give it to yourself to do whatever you want with, because that's your paycheck. So curious, if you're watching right now, let me know in the comments, are you paying yourself each month? So just give me a yes if you are actually transferring it out of your baking account into your own personal account to do whatever you want with. Or give me a no if I'm not quite there yet. Okay, so that is your clue number one. You should be paying yourself. Now, you might be thinking like, I think I can pay myself, but I'm not really clear on all my expenses, and it makes me feel a little bit better to leave it in my account. I hear that one. Or the other one is I'm reinvesting it into my business. So I think I'm making a profit, but I want my business to grow. I want to buy some equipment, or I'm saving for a commercial bakery, all kinds of things that people want to do, your goals for the future. So those are some kind of gray areas where you might be feeling like I could pay myself. I'm just not doing that right now. So in that case, I recommend getting very clear on your month-end statements. Your month-end statements are going to be things like this is my total revenue. These were my total expenses, and this was my profit. So you should at least have that kind of clarity to know from that profit, this is what I could pay myself, but then I'm putting it back into the business. So I understand that a lot of people want to grow their businesses a little bit and want to hang on to the profits, but there first needs to be profit to hang on to. So back to pricing. How does that, what does that have to do with pricing? Well, if you are charging the right amount for your baked goods, then you'll be making a profit on every sale. And if you're making a profit on every sale, then you have money left at the end of the month. It's just that simple. If you don't have money left at the end of the month, then there could be several things going wrong. Most typically, you're not charging enough for your baked goods, and it might take the shape of you're not covering your overhead expenses. So many people know how to price their ingredients and their packaging, but then it kind of comes into this gray area of how do I charge for my overhead? So that would be the first place to check if you're thinking that I don't know if there's enough money left at the end of each month. So now's a good time to talk about a blog post that I actually published this blog post in 2020. So it's been 2 years and I've recently updated it. It's called Pricing Your Baked Goods, How to Price Your Baked Goods the Right Way. And this has been for many years my number one page over on my blog. It's what started the whole perfect pricing calculator and perfect pricing method, which is the course where I teach you how to price your baked goods. But over on that blog post, I literally tell you step by step how to do it. It's all over there on the blog post, free. Go take a look. If you want to brush up on your pricing, I'll drop that link in the comments here so you can be sure to go check out that blog post if you need a refresher on exactly how to price your baked goods. So tip number one, that it's time to raise your prices, was that there's no money left at the end of the month. And that is such a big topic that it could be, like I said, it could be many things. So, all right. So what is another way that you know it's time to raise your prices? Are you in high demand? Are you taking as many orders as you can and selling out all of your availability? This is another way to know that it could be time to raise your prices. It means that the market is willing to pay for what you're doing. So if you go to farmers markets and you typically sell out every market repeatedly, then you could either bring more, but if you're bringing as much as you can produce, and you're still selling out each week, each month, however often you're doing your markets, then that is a sign that you can raise your prices. That means you're in high demand. People are willing to wait in line or pay your prices, and you can try charging a little bit more for some of your items. So if you're taking pre-orders and you generally book up all of your pre-order spots because your customers love what you do, then there is another sign that you can begin to think about raising your prices. Now, stick around to the end of today's Hot Topics because I am going to be sharing some tips with you on exactly how to raise your prices. So that was tip number 2, is that if you often sell out or you book up, then you could raise your prices. And then tip number 3 is if you are feeling, I don't know a nice way to say this, but I'm going to say resentful about the work that you're doing for the price that you're charging. And I am totally guilty of this because I often would undercharge for my cakes and then have this high level of customizing. Like I didn't estimate the time involved in decorating the cake that would match the price quote. So I charged him a price and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much more involved than I originally thought. And I didn't charge accordingly. And then I was getting mad as I was decorating this cake thinking this should sell for a lot more than I sold it for. So if you feel yourself like feeling a little bit resentful for the amount of work that you need to do to make that money, that is another sign that you can consider charging more for that. So see if you've ever felt that way. And if that's common, then it might be time to look at your prices because it's feeling resentful in relation to the price that you're making or the money that you're making for that item. All right, so there are the 3 tips to know when it's time to raise your prices. We talked about are you paying yourself each month? And then we talked about if there's a high demand for your items. And finally, we talked about if you're feeling a little bit resentful in relation to the price that you're getting for the work that you're doing. So curious if you identify with any of those, let me know in the comments. Now, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay, I always love to hear from you. So hashtag replay if you didn't catch this live, but if you're watching it live, hello to you in the comments. I see you there and I'm so happy that you all take some time out of your day to watch this live. And I love reading your comments while I'm talking. It's so fun to see you interacting with the conversation. All right, so now what do you do when you decide you do need to raise your prices? What are 3 tips to raise your prices effectively? First and foremost, I would recommend that you set an effective date. So if I know that I'm going to raise my prices, I'm going to make it effective October 1st. And that means anybody who's paying for their baked goods after October 1st needs to pay the new prices. So if you're taking pre-orders, this is going to require you to chat with your customers about the price change that goes into effect. And the way I would do it is to encourage them, to pay now, get it in at these prices before the prices go up on October 1st. At any rate, set your cutoff date and then hold firm to it. So if you have someone who has an outstanding balance and there's a 50% that was prepaid and then the other 50% is due after October 1st, I wouldn't worry about that so much, but it's the new prices going forward. So any new quotes that you're giving or any new pricing, set your date and stick to it. Number 2 is be firm and don't apologize. If you think about how often we're out as consumers these days and prices go up, that we've just become so used to paying higher prices that we're not getting explanations when we go to put gas in the car and the price is up again, nor are we getting explanations when they come back down for that matter. So you don't owe anybody an explanation for your pricing. And if somebody does ask why your prices have gone up, you can say that it is a supply issue. So you have to pay more for your supplies. But that runs me right into my tip number 3 for raising your prices. And that is to focus on the value that they get from your products. So if you do have to get into a conversation with someone about your price change, I really think it's important to emphasize the value rather than the cost. And the value can be anything like your customer service and your commitment to details. I know that was one for my business. We always talked about that details matter to us, and they, anything from the right color shade to the exact pickup time to delivery, all of those details matter. And so that was our identity that we added to the value of the product with. It was something that we really put into like the whole core belief of the bakery. And focus on what value you bring to your customers. So is it your exceptional level of customer service? Is it your commitment to baking their order as close to the pickup date as possible? Is it your attention to detail when it comes to design, concept, customizing, things like that? So figure out what your value statement is and focus on that rather than the actual price change. And so that can help you negotiate these price increases without feeling like it's all about the money. All right, so there we have it. There's my 3 tips for raising your prices. And then we also talked about how to know when it's time to raise your prices. So that should give you a little bit of motivation to take a look at your prices. Now is the time to deep dive on your pricing and make sure that you're making a profit before we head into the holidays and you start selling high volumes. October is literally days away now, and all kinds of fall tree boxes going out, decorating kits, and then rolling on into Thanksgiving, pies, rolls, cookies. And then, before we know it, it's Christmas. So it is the time to take a deep look at your pricing and make sure the price that you have now is going to carry you through, not just through the holidays, but we only have January off, and then it's Valentine's season. So this to me is like the biggest season for bakers. It is time. It's the calm before the storm. So be sure and jump on over to that blog post that I mentioned earlier. I'll drop it one more time in the chat here. And it literally has step-by-step how to charge for your baked goods. So go check that out if you're not really clear on some of those expenses, like where do you put your overhead? How do you charge for your time? Things like that. All right. So thank you so much for joining. I always try to keep these nice and short, so it's easy, actionable tips. And this week's action is to go read the blog post if you need any help with your pricing, and then raise your prices. It's time. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. And you know the drill. I will see you next week, 2 p.m. Central, for the next edition of Hot Topics Live. Thanks for watching, everyone.